So, Dante, Mos, Yasiin.
Yes, Yasiin Bey.
Take us through...
Pretty Flacco.
All of those.
Tell us the story of meeting Yasiin Bey, and when did you guys decide, hey, maybe we should rhyme together?
I was a fan of Yasiin before I met him. He was in a group called Urban Thermodynamics, and they had a record, My Kung Fu, and then they had a record, Manifest Destiny. And he was also a guy who was on television. Malcolm Jamal Warner had a TV show, spin-off from The Cosby Show that Yasiin was on. He was on The Cosby Mysteries, with Bill Cosby. He was on a show with Nell Carter. He was doing commercials and stuff. And so he was just he was a local boy made good.
Yeah.
And then I would see him at the park, and he was definitely different because we was all like in whatever hip hop gear of the time, and he was wearing suits and slacks and different types of things. Gabardine and all types of different fashion choices
Loafers.
that we weren't making. You know what I'm saying? But he would jump in a cypher with us, and he would be right there with us. And so at a certain point, he was just somebody, a local dude that I was a fan of, and he used to come in the bookstore. I used to try to slide in my demo tape, and it was whatever. But Darcel, the mother of my first two children, she became friends with the mother of his first children.
Yeah.
And their relationship, I started getting invited over to dinner.
Yeah.
Kids will do that for you.
Yeah. They were pregnant at the same time. That's what it was.
They were.
And so I started getting invited. We started doing these family dinners. And Dante's son, Elijah, I used to leave my demo tapes over at his house. Me and High Tech, I had started going out to Cincinnati by that time. We had a tape called Groundation that I brought up to UPROXX back in the day. And it was a picture of Amani on the cover. I remember it was Amani as a baby.
Oh, wow.
And I left one of those tapes at his house.
Okay.
And he came to the bookstore one day and he was like, yo, Elijah played me this tape that you left.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Elijah played the tape.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so I met him and I was a fan of his, and then we became friends. And then after all of that, then he started taking an interest in me musically.
Okay.
And so he was putting out a single with UPROXX. Now, Jared and Brian were went to school friends with John Forte? Yeah. And John Forte was an A&R at UPROXX.
Yes, I remember
back
that.
in the day.
Yeah.
And so I was hanging out with Makiba Mooncycle. She was my manager.
Makiba.
Forte set up a meeting at Makiba Mooncycle's house 2 years before I was hanging out with Yasiin.
Okay.
And Jared and Brian came over, and it was like Sons of Man and Seven Universal and Population Click, Allah San Rest in Peace, Shabar Allah. And it was me and Makiba and Prodigal Son, Killer Priest, Hellraiser.
Family.
60-Second Assassin. All of us in that apartment trying to get a record deal from these two white boys.
How'd that work out?
Everybody got a deal but me. Yeah.
Wow.
Everybody got a deal but me. But I feel like I wasn't pressed for a deal at that point. I was more observing because I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I've never heard of these guys. How much money could they possibly have, and how they could put all of us out at the same time?
Yeah.
And so those projects came out, and that was like the first iteration of UPROXX.
Okay.
And I actually didn't know what happened to those projects. You know what I'm saying? But then a couple of years later, Yasiin is like, "Yo, I'm putting out singles of UPROXX." I'm like, Jared and Brian, UPROXX?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. He's like, they gave me money. I was like, they gave you money?
Wait a minute.
How much money they gave you? He told me, and I was like, they gave you how much? And it was a very little bit of money.
Yeah.
But it was more money than I'd ever heard of anybody giving anybody at that point in my life.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I set up a meeting. I called you or I don't know, texted you or beeped you. I beeped you. I sent
Two-way.
you
It was a two-way.
I sent you, no, it was before then.
It was before two-way.
You sent a SkyTel pager.
Beeper. I love it.
And I'm like, let's have a meeting. And I went up there and played him a bunch of records. And I had done a song with Mr. Man and Mos Def. And I played a bunch of records. And as I'm trying to fast forward past that one, because that was like for later. I'm trying to get on with Talib Kweli.
That's right. That's right.
I was trying to fast forward past that. And I don't remember if it was Jared or it was Brian, but one of them was like, what's that? I was like, this record I did with Mos Def. They was like, with Mos Def? Let's put that out.
Okay.
But I didn't want to ride no coattails. So I was like, nah. And we went back and forth for a little bit, but they ended up being correct about that. And we put out that record.
What we done started. Look at what we done started. This the people party. When opportunity knocking, then young nigga move that door. Whoa, get your foot stuck in it, call me young, go get it. They can't fuck with it, might as well roll with it. What's the word?